Thank you, Dan. Austin, I'm assuming you're wanting me to use both mics.
No, just the one.
This one? Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, that's good because I talk with my hands. I am from the South. And it would have been an interesting show had I had to hold on to that this entire time. As Dan said, I am Mindy McCloughan, President and CEO of Loveland Chamber, and I'm super excited to be back here. I was here exactly 1 year ago today. And, I'm married to David McCloughan. He's the local hometown football guy. Most of you know him. But he and I are going through a season in our life where, as we get older, we face health issues. And last week, we were hit with one, and it really threw me off center. And I'm not used to that. So Dan mentioned we've been talking about this topic for months now. And so I am usually, even though I run 3 days ahead of God wherever I'm going, I usually already have my PowerPoint, I have my talking points, my bullets, and I have them down where it is memorized. And last week we were hit with this new little roadblock in our life, and it threw me off center, and I called Dan and I said, it's like writer's block, it's not coming. So would you please just be in unison and pray with me for clarity? He came over and prayed with me, but he calls it the data dump. So all week long, I've been waiting on that data dump. And I have been pouring myself into the Word and reminding God daily, God, I need clarity. Even Dan says I need a data dump. So would you please give me the data dump? So to no avail, at 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, God woke me with a data dump. And he left me with 3 words: faith, fear, and blind spots. And when I got in the car on Wednesday morning, it was of no surprise to me that what was sitting in my front seat was a paddle that says faith and fear. This was made at Vacation Bible Camp by my granddaughter this last July. And I've been toting it around since July because I didn't have the heart to take it up and put it in her room since she's not here. All of our grandchildren are in Texas. And I'll digress for just 1 second. God gave us grandchildren, and she was our first, and all of them can get anything and everything out of their grandparents. And I have often said since I've had her, or all of them, that if I could have skipped having children altogether and had them, I would have done so. My children think that I am crazy, and that is okay, which is why I digress to say one thing. God gave us grandchildren to help us as adults become children again. And when he brings the second, third, fourth, and my kids are breeding like rabbits now, so they're growing, it's to slowly teach us how to be responsible adults with them again. David and I are not there, which is why this faith and fear paddle ended up in my front seat on Wednesday morning. So with that, y'all just bear with me here. So I promise you this is only 9 slides, so there will not be death by PowerPoint. I will cover some tricks of the trade, lessons I've learned over 26 years in the industry and 24 years in my faith walk. And hopefully I'll leave you with a few nuggets to apply to your daily faith walk, both professionally and personally. So today's agenda, we're going to cover the truth about faith and fear, to wrestle with doubt, blind spots, and operating in the Spirit. And then if time permits, because I have a lot of stories, and I'm going to try to stick to this agenda, we're going to do a few 3-minute table talk exercises to stretch your faith muscles. So let's dive in. Faith and fear cannot reside in the same tent, nor can they coexist. We all know with life challenges and life's ever-changing pace, we experience uncertainty and the unknown. And that unknown causes fear to surface, sometimes paralyzing fear. Just look at our current political situation, both local, statewide, and nationwide. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the TV, and the floodgates of fear will come roaring into your life. So just real quick exercises. Any of you, what causes some of your fear? Just shout it out. This is not a test. The unknown. News, thank you. Insecurity. Anybody else? We've all hit on them. Today's story begins with Abraham, and you all know the story. But to quickly recap, God calls him to leave his home to go found a new nation, which he later learned was Canaan. And God promised his seed would inherit the land. You may ask, Mindy, why, and what is this pertinent to us today? Well, our commonalities with Abraham are greater than you think. For starters, Abraham didn't choose God. God chose him. Abraham was called to go, and so are we. He had no idea where, and neither do we. He was enormously blessed, and so are we. He had divine purpose over his life, and so do we. He thought God was taking too long, and so have we. He tried to fulfill a miraculous plan with natural means, and so have we. He takes matters into his own hands and with resultant heartache, and so have we. I don't know what makes you fearful, but I'm going to go into our story real quick, and then I'm going to deep dive back into Abraham and Sarah. But one of my biggest fears is heights. And you all know that we put on the Corn Roast Festival, and several years ago we had just a catastrophe when they moved us from downtown back to the fairgrounds. And so the city and I were at odds like this, trying to pull off the largest event that this community has. And it takes every department within the city to pull it off, and over 200 volunteers, and a lot of money. And so after that particular year, I was so angry over an incident that had taken place that that night I got home, and David and I were out on the boat, and admittedly I had a couple of cocktails, forgive me. But A.J. McDonald lives next door to us, and he has a helicopter, and he does helicopter tours. So I was so mad that I was determined I was going up in the helicopter, and I was going to circle this town until I found a new location for us to host corn roast without using city property. And so I asked AJ, he said, sure, just come up, I'll take you in the morning at 9. Okay, I am raring to go. The next morning at 9 o'clock, I realized what I had done. And I was physically ill. I said, I'm not going. David said, you are getting up out of this bed and you are getting in that helicopter. He is excited about it, and you can already hear the propellers running outside. So I get up, moving like a sloth. I look like the wrath of God. I put a vomit bag in the back of my pocket because he does not know that I have a fear of heights. And I'm trying to put on the brave face. Remember, ladies, get up, dress up, and show up, and never, ever, ever give up. So by now I am crawling over to that helicopter. I get in, we go up, and I'm just, Mindy, face your fears, you can do this. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. And at the back of my head, I'm going, you're an idiot. I cannot believe you just did this to yourself. Long story short, AJ took me all over the place. I never got sick. And in fact, within 3 minutes of being up in the air, I had a different perspective. And it was so enlightening. I was taking pictures of this, and I was doing selfies with AJ, and wanting to talk on the radio and, be the helicopter lady, but I didn't get to do all those things. But my point to say this was, when we landed, I had a whole new perspective. I changed the way I thought and how I was going to work with the city. Not only did I get up there and find out there was no other property to hold an event of this size, so I had to swallow my pride and go back and go, okay, we do have to have this here. But now I say all that to say this. I want to go back to Abraham and Sarah for a minute. Y'all bear with me. Told you I'd get sidetracked on stories. The one thing in Genesis 15, when God talks to Abraham and he reminds him of a second time, Abraham was in his tent when the Lord spoke to him and told him. And then God escorted him outside the limited perimeters of his man-made tent to expand his vision. Sometimes the faith walker stares too long at the cramped walls of his or her own understanding and needs to be escorted outside where he or she can see the wide open sky and be challenged to think bigger. I promise this is going to work. So right now we're going to do some table talk time. Okay? This is just within your table. We're going to spend 3 minutes. Is it possible that your vision is too limited and your faith has been indoors, so to speak, far too long? Talk amongst yourselves at your tables, and can you admit that there are possible areas in your life that you have blinders on? And we'll come back in 3 minutes. All right, let me bring you back to we have a long way to go and a short time to get there. And that's from Smokey and the Bandit, if y'all didn't know that. So let me bring us back. Okay, it takes faith to wrestle with doubt. And let me assure you, I can count more times than I care to admit in my life where my vision was limited, my faith was squelched due to my short-sightedness, my stubbornness, and my self-doubt. And I've never met anyone who hasn't been plagued with doubt at some point in their life, even if only for a short season. You see, feeling conflicted and confused is not the same thing as faithfulness or faithlessness. It's okay to question God with the spirit of humility, as Abraham did many times, and so did Sarah. I, too, have questioned God many times on my journey, both professionally and personally. And a real quick story. When I got here in 2012, I had been divorced, and I came from a Southern Baptist world where you were just told that if you get a divorce, you're damaged goods, and you will never, ever, ever have a blessing from God or be married again. And I lived under that condemnation for many years, but for 4 years specifically before I got here. And within 23 days of arrival, I was introduced to my now husband, and there was a setup. The economic developer knew him well, and she was trying to set us up, and she just hounded us and hounded us and hounded us till we went out. Long story short, I didn't want to go out with him. I didn't care about football players. I was not starstruck. And I had a really big job turning this chamber around. Not to mention, I was still living under condemnation that you will never be blessed. And if you marry someone else, you're an adulteress. So I'd pretty much written that off, plus the fact of some past fractured file folders of trauma that I didn't have much respect for men. And sorry, guys, but I just didn't. And so she hounded us and hounded us till we finally went out. And honestly, he didn't want to go out with me either because he had seen one picture and saw me in the paper and said, she looks like a bossy business lady whom I'll never get along with, so I don't want to go out with her either. And he had been divorced for 2 years by the time I had gotten here. And on our first date out, our first time we met, it was a very strange encounter, but nonetheless, I just chalked it up to, okay, now I've done it. I've done my tour of duty. Now she'll leave us alone, and that will stop. As luck would have it, within a week, God stirred me that morning and said, you need to get up because David's going to call you today, and you're going to the lake. And so I went, what? Why would I go to a lake with David? And so I was like, all right. Naturally, if you know me, I run 3 days ahead of God. So what did I do? I get up and go get all the supplies to go to a lake. The only lake I know of here is Lake Loveland. So I'm busting at the seams. I get to the lake. I bring my son with me, and because I'm ahead of God, because I don't want my son meeting David yet because this is crazy, I'm automatically thinking, I'll just be at the same lake he's going to be at, and we'll just run into one another, and Landon can say, oh, yes, this is David, okay? So what do? But we get in the car, go to Lake Loveland, got our little tubes. I leave everything I own in my car, phone, everything. And God has other plans for me. Because as we're floating out on the swim area at Lake Loveland, like I'm really going to run into David in the swim area, I look up and the sun is shining down on my car, and the passenger side door is wide open. And I realize suddenly my son and I are out in the middle of Lake Loveland. Everything I own, I've only been here for 23 days, everything I own, keys, wallet, I'm in this liberal state and I'm fixing to get stolen. Everything's going to be taken from me. I'm in a state of panic. And what do I do but jump out of that raft, and I'm swimming like an Olympic athlete to get to my car. That's what was going on in my head. I'm sure if anyone else was watching me, I looked like a sloth moving because I am not the athletic one in our family. Nonetheless, I get to my car, open my door, or shut the door, run over, and realize nothing's taken, but my phone's laying in there, and there's a missed call from David and a text that says, "Hey, I'm at the lake. I'd like for you to join me today." And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So am I. I'm right here. Where are you? And he goes, "Where are you at? What lake?" And I said, "Well, the only lake there is at Lake Loveland." And he's like, "Yeah, no, that's not the lake I'm at." So he says, "Get in the car," gives me the directions. We go. Second encounter. Turns out great. About halfway through, we're having a cookout. We're sitting in lawn chairs, and David stands up because it's time to go upstairs to where they're cooking to fix the meal. And as he stood up, he put his hand out to take my hand, and I stood up with his hand. And there was the current that took place from his hand to my heart. And I didn't understand it. In fact, I fought it. I fought it really, really, really hard because it made no sense to me why God would take me 1,000 miles from my reality as damaged goods to put me in front of Mr. Right. So this rocks on, and if you know my husband, he's like a coach, okay? He doesn't ask anyone anything, he tells you. So from almost the first week, he would say, "You're going to marry me. You're going to marry me." And I went, "Yeah, I don't think so, buddy." About the second month, he kept on and on and on. And I said, "You know, you probably need to talk to God about that because he hasn't delivered that message to me." Now we're 3 months into it, and I am in such a spiritual torment. My head and my heart were in conflict. And I knew the only way to come out of this was to go back to God. So this was on a Monday. David's gone to Ohio or wherever he's at scouting. He's at a college somewhere off on one of his 10-day trips. And I got on my face in my closet and I said, "God, I'm tired of the torment. So if this is what you want from me, then I need 2 things to happen. And if those 2 things don't happen, I'm cutting this cord and I'm ending the relationship." Even though I had no valid reason for doing so, other than the torment that was going on inside me. My 2 prayer requests were, A, he has to ask me, not tell me. And if you know my husband, that is an impossible task to come out of his mouth. And secondly, I would never do this without the blessing of his parents. Now, if you know the McCloughans, David is the golden boy. He had just come off of a really bad divorce, and his parents were very, very, very burned from that divorce. And there was no one else getting close to the golden boy, especially not the little blonde from Texas who talks funny. That was on a Monday. On Wednesday, he comes home early. And he says, "Can I take you to dinner?" And I said, "Sure." So we go to dinner, come home, and we're sitting in my driveway, and he gets very emotional. Again, if you know my husband, he does not get emotional. So he says, "God has been beating me up all week long, so I came home early. I have to ask you something." And I went, "Okay, what are you going to ask me?" And he goes, "I'm sorry, you deserve much better than this. This is not the place or time to do this, but I have to get something out." And I said, "Okay, what?" And he says, "Will you please marry me?" So I'm fighting back tears, and I'm going, "Whoa, stallion, you're coming out of the gate before the buzzer sounds. You're going to have to give me some time." Again, he doesn't know what I've prayed. No one knows my prayer. So on Friday, he says, I'm going to take you and Logan, which is my daughter, up to Vail to see the leaves turn." I said, "Sure, great." We go up there, have a great day. On the way home, he says, "If I can get Mom and Dad and the kids and everybody to meet us at Henry's for dinner, do you want to have dinner with us?" "Sure, we'll do it." Fast forward, we're at Henry's, and at the end of the night, now again, this is only my second time to have met, maybe third time to have met my now in-laws. And we're sitting at the end of the night, and my mother-in-law leans all the way across the table. She goes, "Mindy," and I fearfully put my hand out and said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Kent and I want you to know something." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "We've never seen our Davy this happy. We know you're the one." At that moment in time, I knew that God had not only answered my prayers, but that He had moved in such a divine way to even answer me. The God of our universe, while I'm beating on heaven's gates with bloody fists in the bottom of my closet, going, "I'm getting out of this relationship if you don't deliver 2 things to me." And He does it. That's how gracious our God is. Beth Moore pins it this way: to embrace the one who we walk with, we must find security in His identity rather than His predictability. I'm getting so ahead of myself. Y'all just hang on with me, okay? So let's talk about capacity. Everything has capacity. This room has capacity. A closet has capacity. A coffee cup, a tool chest, our minds, etc. What you fill it with will determine its viability. Not only what it's used for, but how we use it. Well, I believe, and this is in my walk, my faith walk and professional walk, that we aren't reaching our fullest capacity because of blind spots, and we all have them. Both blind spots in leadership, which are weaknesses that can impact our effectiveness as a leader and our career. And if you don't know what your blind spots are, you just ask someone close to you in your office. And then you be ready for the answer. But our spiritual blind spots, which is unchecked sin. T.D. Jakes reads it this way: blind spots are the place we all allow ourselves not to be changed. Areas you won't allow your faith to touch, where your faith is not penetrating and you don't see it. Vengeance and anger and hurt create blind spots. And I'm not talking about good people and evil people, right people and wrong people. I'm talking about places where there should be love, but there's hate. Like maybe your heart. I wonder what is your blind spot? What I'm asking you to do is to reflect the mercy you have been given. The reason I have to be merciful is because I've received mercy. And every time I want to be judgmental, I keep remembering something that God did in my life. You see, the devil is far too clever and well acquainted with your blind spots to let you get off that easy. So here we go to some more table talk. Oh, wait a minute. Before I jump there, I want one more story to tell you. I was reminded this week when I was asking God to show me, do the data dump, and this story came to me about a glow stick, and you may have heard this, but this woman was in a store, and her husband, or not her husband, but she was, this woman and her toddler and a little bit older child were in there, and she was buying the oldest child, a package of glow sticks. And the toddler was throwing a fit. I mean, by fit, I mean all-out temper tantrum. And it was agitating this woman. Not the mom, but the woman watching. And so the mom opened the glow sticks and gave the child, the little one, a glow stick. And it became completely happy just slinging around a glow stick. A few minutes later, the older child takes the glow stick back, to which ensues another screaming fit. So by this point, they're checking out, walking out the door. The woman's walking out with her. And the mom's getting agitated now, so she says, "Give him back that stick." But the older child wanted to break the stick and show the little one the purpose behind the glow stick, and in which the glow stick was created. You see, there are some people who are just content with being. And some of us are taking our brokenness and using it for God's messages. Because we don't know, oftentimes, or at least in my life, I didn't know what my purpose was until God had to break me. And it was in those broken moments that glow was able to show. So anytime you see someone walking around with a glow stick that's not glowing, remind them to find their true purpose in and through Him. So, 3 minutes of talk time again. How far are you willing to go to reach your full capacity. You've heard the stumbling blocks as to why you're not. Now, what are you willing to do to reach your full capacity? 3 minutes. And I promise you, if I can stay on agenda, we'll get done a few minutes early so you have some more time to either ask questions of me, and I am an open book, or network a little further. But let's jump into our next slide, and that is operating in the Spirit. I'm just going to share with you and be very vulnerable here. One of my many blind spots is that I have been a perfectionist for most of my adult life. And after many years of disappointments in myself, as well as strained relationships with family and friends, and many, many, many missed opportunities and blessings, I've learned that perfectionism is unattainable, as only Christ is and was perfect and without sin. And we should instead strive for excellence. You all know the story of Daniel in the lion's den. So I'm not going to go through that whole thing, but in Daniel 1-3, it says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom." Hang on, I just jumped. Okay. "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps," if I'm saying that correctly, "to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom." Here's where we fail. The enemy's sole purpose is to keep us dwelling on our past, and that is our past failures, our hurts, disappointments, regrets, shame, or hyper-focused on our future. The ifs, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. What's in the future? I should do this differently now. Self-doubt, repeats past failures. You see, if he can keep us in one of those 2 places, he not only robs us of our joy, he can rob us of our present. Why? Because the present, now I want you to catch this, the present is the only point where time touches eternity. So I'm going to say that again. If he can keep you in your past or hyper-focused on your future and keep you out of your present moment, it's because the present is the only point where time touches eternity. Dan mentioned this earlier, talking about eternity. God just wants us to be. And he wants to be in the here, in the now, with you. You see, in the book of Acts, Luke mentions the Holy Spirit more than 55 times. And after all that Luke had seen, heard, and experienced with God in his 84 years of life, it's no wonder, under the inspiration of God, that his gospel reads in Luke 11:13, "How much more will the Heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to those who ask?" His only request is for you to believe and to ask. So in closing, I'm going to read, I do have a few minutes, I'm going to read something that was brought to me this week. If you've heard this, then it's going to be a little bit redundant, but it's very good. This week we launched our Leadership Loveland class, and the rocket, Dewan Rocket from the group. So if you've heard this, the mastery from him, it's amazing. Now, I'm not as astute as him, so I don't have it memorized, so I'm going to read it. Mastery. Mastery in one's career and consciousness growth simply requires that we consistently produce results beyond and out of the ordinary. Mastery is a product of consistently going beyond our limits. For most people, it starts with technical excellence in a chosen field and a commitment to that excellence. If you're willing to commit yourself to excellence, to surround yourself with things that represent this and miracles, your life will change. When we speak of miracles, we speak of events or experiences in the real world which are beyond the ordinary. It's remarkable how much mediocrity we live with. Surrounding ourselves with daily reminders that the average is the acceptable. Our world suffers from terminal normality. Take a moment to assess all the things around you that promote your being average. These are the things that keep you powerless to go beyond a limit you've arbitrarily set for yourself. The first step to mastery is the removal of everything in your environment that represents mediocrity, removing those things that are limiting. One way is to surround yourself with friends who ask more of you than you do. Didn't some of your teachers, your coaches, your parents, etc.? Another step on this path to mastery is the removal of resentment toward masters. Develop compassion for yourself so that you can be in the presence of masters and grow from the experience, rather than comparing yourself and resenting people who have mastery. Remain open and receptive. Let the experience be like the planting of a seed within you that with nourishment will grow into your individual mastery. You see, we're all ordinary, but a master, rather than condemning himself for his ordinariness, will embrace it and use it as a foundation for building the extraordinary. Rather than using it as an excuse for inactivity, he will use it as a vehicle for correcting, which is essential in the process of attaining mastery. You may be able to correct yourself you must be able to correct yourself without invalidating or condemning yourself, to accept results and improve upon them. Correct, don't protect. Correction is essential to power and mastery. Stuart Emery. Well, I want to say thank you. I did stay within my time frame. I was afraid I would not. But we do have a few minutes. If anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I know it's a big group. It can be very intimidating. So I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to catch up. But Dan, I'll turn it back over to you unless there's questions. Anybody have any questions? Y'all don't have to be shy. Even if it's a football question, I'll try to answer it. I won't promise it'll be the same one that comes out of my husband's mouth, but
We're just wondering who's going to win the Super Bowl.
I don't have that answer. She asked who was going to win the Super Bowl. All right, Dan, I'll turn it over.